natural gas, that's oil, that's electricity. And that's because we weren't paying attention 3 years ago when we passed all those bipartisan bills and the governor if elected.
I'd like to introduce Bobby Williams. He's one of the candidates for the state senate seat that's being evacuated by Jay Kahn, who's here tonight. He's done a heck of a job. It's going to be tough shoes to fill. So, Bobby, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us all your policies.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming here. Thank you to Clean Dams, I'm sorry, the Swanzey Dams for putting this together. What a great event. We'll have a good crowd. Thank you to Jay Kahn for what we've accomplished in the Senate. One of us is going to have to fill your shoes. That's not going to be so easy. My name is Bobby Williams. I'm running to be your state senator. Currently, I'm a city councilor up in Keene. I know a lot of people in Swanzey don't know a lot about me, so let me tell you about what kind of city councilor I am. I represent Ward 2 on the Keene City Council, which is on, Ward 2 is on the east side. There's 5 wards in Keene. While I work on behalf of the entire city, everybody on that council knows me as the guy from Ward 2, because I'm always sticking up for Ward 2. Ward 2, we have some great neighborhoods. It's a fine place to live, raise a family as I'm doing. It's also got some challenges. Some of the poorest areas of Keene are in Ward 2. It's a low-lying part of town. We've got problems with flooding. We've got some of the worst infrastructure in Keene. A lot of the housing stock is in really bad shape. So I've been very active on issues like housing and flood control. The sidewalks in Ward 2 are some of the worst in the city. On the council, people have started calling me Mr. Sidewalk because I'm just relentless and let's fix these broken sidewalks. And I won't stop pushing for it. I'm telling this because I want you to know that I will be the same kind of state senator for District 10 as I am a city councilor for Ward 2. I will be relentlessly focused on the needs of the district. So what are those needs? Well, housing is a big one. People need places where they can afford to live. Employers need to be able to hire people from out of state and have them come here and find a nice place for them to have a family. Transportation is another problem we face here. It seems like every year traffic is getting a little worse. As the region grows, we need to make sure that we can absorb that change. I think there needs to be a regional bus system that can take people from Swanzey to Keene. It can take cars off the road, even if you aren't going to ride the bus. Just knowing that there's a bit less traffic because those buses are available to the people who want to use them. We've also got systems like the rail trails around here. That's very important from a transportation perspective. I'm big on e-bikes. I think that they're a major component of our future transportation. Being able to take a bike in and around this region is one more way we can get some cars off the road and be a little greener. We need to be able to connect via bus with the Amtrak system in Brattleboro. We need to be able to connect to the airport in Manchester. These are the ways that we can connect to the outside world. Another problem we face in this region, in this district specifically, is problems associated with the aging of our population. We need better housing options for the elderly, and we need more support for family members who are taking care of elderly or disabled loved ones. Southwest New Hampshire has the highest rate of Alzheimer's and dementia in the state. We need to do something about that. My father died after years of experiencing dementia, so this is an important issue for me. We need to be a dementia-friendly community. There's a lot of other important issues to me. Protecting the environment, I'm big on defending public education. But what I want you to take away today is that I will stand up for the needs of the people in this district, just as I've stood up for the people of Ward 2 on the Keene City Council. And I think that's really a lot of what people want from their senator. I hope that's what you want, and I hope you'll vote for me. The primary is September 13th. Thank you very much.
And now we'll hear from Donovan Fenton, running for the same seat. And he can leave it on his bio and thoughts.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank everyone for being here today and hosting us. My name is Donovan Fenton. I see a lot of familiar faces here, but also a lot of new ones, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Keene with my wife, Jackie. We both went to Keene High School. We have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. They're wild animals, so be happy they're not here. I snuck away for a little bit to go to college and graduate school. Came back and worked full-time in my family business. This has been our home all our lives, and it's really an amazing feeling to run for office in the place you grew up in. This is a community that raised me, and our family decided to put our roots here. And that's really what my campaign is about, fighting for the community that is our home. It's an amazing feeling when you knock on someone's door and they say, "Hey, Donovan, I taught you math," or they coached you in Little League. I knocked on someone's door the other day and they said, "Man, I was terrified when you got your driver's license." So it's those awesome connections that I have. And I first ran for the House in 2016 to give a younger voice to the legislature. I was one of 4 under the age of 40. Now, if I'm elected to the state Senate, I'll be the only one under the age 40 if elected. During my 3 terms in the House, firsthand what young families are struggling with, because I'm living it right now. My wife Jackie was a daycare teacher when we had our first son, Harrison. We did the math, and her full-time wage was less than the cost of daycare. So let that sink in. Her full-time wage was less than what it costs for childcare. Our other son, Cooper, is on a wait list for childcare right now. Parents across New Hampshire cannot find a job because they cannot find the resources they need. I sponsored a bill that would help businesses ease that burden of childcare for employees, and it was shut down because the other side didn't see an issue. They instead decided to lower our business tax. And as a business owner, I will tell you, the business profits tax isn't what's affecting our economy. It's parents who cannot find the resources they need. Right now, we're witnessing a national effort to define, dismantle, and privatize our public education. We have an extremist group here in New Hampshire who places their political ideologies above our public school students. We heard a proposal that would have removed art, music, health, world languages, and physical education from our public school curriculum. We need to invest in our public schools and our teachers, and that's what I'll do, and I have done the past 6 years in the House. In the State House, food and water are not allowed in our chambers. But do you know what you can have on you? Your gun. Yeah, let that sink in. My first term, I sat next to a man who had a gun right on his hip. We have a serious gun problem in our country. Thoughts and prayers do not fix it. I co-sponsored a red flag law that removes firearms from a person who may present themselves a danger to others. And we got it through the House and we got it through the Senate, and the governor vetoed that bill. That bill has the potential to save lives. That's the type of sensible legislation I will continue to bring forward if elected. It's hard to think of an issue that impacts more people than the housing shortage, as we heard. When Jackie and I, Jackie's my wife, started looking for a house, it took us 2 years to find a house, and we ended up moving in when she was 9 months pregnant. Nobody likes moving, but that move was a little crazy, I'll admit. But our economic well-being depends on a sufficient supply of housing. We need to support our community and diverse workforce. As an employer, I can't hire because people cannot find a place to live. They cannot find the childcare. They can't find childcare access, the resources they need. We have a huge opportunity here to create efficient and sustainable housing for those who need it. But none of these issues above are going to matter, though, if we don't address protecting our environment. We tried to pass sustainable and renewable energy projects in the House, and the argument against it was it would raise your electrical bill. Now New Hampshire pays more for energy because of vetoes and pro-fossil fuel appointments, and I'm sure we're going to hear more about that soon. But the governor vetoed every bill that would significantly lower demand or increase alternative sources. New Hampshire needs to go green and embrace renewable energy, but more importantly, it needs to be made affordable. These are issues we can fix, and I have worked and fought for the past 6 years in the State House to do so. One issue we can never give up on, though, is a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions. The Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, ending 50 years of federal abortion rights. This decision shows how important it is to vote at a local level. We're the front lines to ensure women in New Hampshire have access to the services they need. The future of reproductive justice depends on our local elections. I'm committed to doing everything I can to protect and expand access to the full range of reproductive health care. Thank you. I have built up the colleagues and the coalitions to work on these things my past 6 years in the House. These issues should not be Republican or Democratic, but our issues. Investing in our communities, ending gun violence, protecting our environment, protecting women's reproductive health care, and protecting our public schools, the same public schools who made me who I am today. I'm asking for your support to send me back to the State House and send me to the State Senate to fix these issues. This is the community that raised me, and I'll never stop fighting for it. Thank you. Saying.
Thank you, Donovan. And now, give a warm welcome to Dr. Tom Sherman, please.
Thank you. I'm a bit of a wanderer, so I can't stay behind the podium. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and the amazing work that you two have done to bring this space. I look at it as the potential. In my district, we have a very similar building that has just sat there. And so it needs your touch to get to be this beautiful. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Sherman. I've been a doctor for 35 years, a state rep, a state senator, and now I'm the Democratic nominee for governor. And that's really news, because this is the first time since Maggie Hassan that we don't have a primary. And that's been so important because I can go across the state and stand here with all the state rep candidates, the state senate candidates, the executive council candidates, and we can all work together to make sure we get New Hampshire back on track and that we move forward as a state. I would just love to have, I know we've had the state senate candidates up, but can the state rep candidates all stand up just so everybody knows who they are? Thank you so much. I know what it feels like, and sometimes you feel like you're on your own, but you're not. This year is different. I was on the Blue Hampshire Task Force, and we are with you. So I'm really excited that you're here tonight. And the state senate candidates, you have two great candidates, and it's going to be a tough choice, but I know you'll make the right choice here in Swanzey. My love of service, my passion for service started as an EMT in high school. I was a volunteer, and I think Donovan was talking about what it was like when his teachers saw him out driving. If you can imagine, my teachers saw me driving an ambulance at 17, that's frightening. But from that, I knew that the rest of my life, I wanted to devote my career to service, to helping others. And in my 35 years as a doctor, I really had two absolutely critical take-home lessons. The first is that every single relationship has to be built on trust. You don't want to go to a doctor you don't trust, and I don't want to send people to doctors I don't trust. So that relationship was between me and the patients, it was me and their families, and with colleagues. And the other major take-home lesson is that every patient, I had to learn active listening. I had to practice active listening, because if I didn't, I'd miss a diagnosis. And that's the worst outcome I could possibly have. But those two skills, or those two ways of sort of guiding your life, are critical for the legislature. In the House, I found that building relationships of trust and active listening was what allowed me to actually reach across the aisle and get things done and lead on those things. And those things that we were able to lead on, Medicaid expansion, lowering prescription drug prices, and taking and setting some of the toughest standards on drinking water in the country. And finally, making sure our firefighters were safe from really dangerous chemicals called PFAS. Those are the things that we've been able to accomplish, all of them bipartisan, all of them being able to listen and build trust. And so I've been going across the state, just like tonight, and I've been listening. And what I've been hearing across the state is that people are really concerned. Families are concerned, as Donovan was talking about and Bobby was talking about. Families are concerned about whether they can even stay in their own home. Skyrocketing cost of property taxes, 15% in Sununu's 6 years. 15% increase statewide in property taxes. And the other cost, energy, now doubling. We've heard earlier that a lot of this had to do with Sununu's vetoes, but energy is doubling. That's natural gas, that's oil, that's electricity. And that's because we weren't paying attention 3 years ago when we passed all those bipartisan bills and the governor vetoed them. And the third one that's going up that's so critical is housing. And we've heard about that too tonight. People can't find housing. People want to downsize. They can sell their house, but they can't downsize because there's nowhere to downsize to in New Hampshire. So when we think about that, and we think about what families are going through, I've also been listening to parents. And parents have been talking about how there's no child care. And they're worried about the quality of their public schools. It's pouring rain out. Which we really need. Let's give a round of applause for somebody. But businesses, and you have some of the greatest businesses in New Hampshire right in this area, in Keene, and Swanzey, and other places around here. And those businesses can't find workforce. Just today, we were at a business that's absolutely thriving, wants to start a whole new shift, and they can't, because they can't find workforce. And when they did find workforce, they lost them, because they couldn't find the housing. Is Governor Sununu listening to any of this? No. Governor Sununu is doing whatever works for his political career. Whatever works for him. He has repeatedly caved to right-wing extremists. And one great example that I've been fighting against for years is taking away a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. That's critical. And as a doctor, I sit back and I say, now 50% of the population has lost their ability to make their own health care decisions. And Sununu owns it. The Sununu abortion ban forced women to have an invasive, expensive, and medically unnecessary procedure if they wanted an abortion. Is that the New Hampshire you know? Is that the New Hampshire that we all love? Where the state, not the doctor, the state is telling you you have to have a transvaginal ultrasound if you want an abortion, if you need an abortion. No exceptions for rape, no exceptions for incest, no exception if the fetus won't survive outside the womb. None. You were forced by the state of New Hampshire to carry that fetus to term. That's cruel. Sununu owns it. Don't ever forget that. And is that the kind of person you want for governor? Somebody who will do that, who will get right between you and your doctor and take away your right to make those very private and personal decisions? Is that what you want?
No.
That's what you've got right now. But he didn't stop there. He continued to cave to the right, to this far extreme group that, by the way, is not the independents I know. It doesn't represent the moderate Republicans I know, because they're dismantling the core of our communities in our public schools. They're targeting our teachers. I had a really fun event the other day. I was talking about my teachers. How many teachers are there here? Look at all of them. You are, let's do a big one. You are the core of our community. So I'm out in Cornish, New Hampshire, talking about Mrs. Jewell, Mrs. Binder, Mr. Jose, Mr. Gaynor, and a woman comes up to me afterwards and goes, "Where did you go to elementary school?" And I said, "Hindley." She said, "So did I." Well, Hindley's in Connecticut. And out in the middle of this farm field in Cornish, there were two of us, Hindley graduates. I could sing the fight song for Hindley, but I'll spare you. But that's what teachers mean to me, and I know they mean to all of us. That's what you've done for the people of New Hampshire, for the kids of New Hampshire, even if you have to watch Donovan driving around when he turns 60.
I'm a good driver now.
And I'm sure Bobby had the same thing.
Don't follow me off.
But he didn't stop there. Sununu has defunded our public schools. I don't know if you remember this. He says he can't veto budgets. He vetoed a budget in 2019. He vetoed a budget with $134 million of additional state funding for public schools. He vetoed that. There was another $20 million. He vetoed that. It finally made it into the compromise budget. But this time he cut $50 million from the public school budget at the state level. And he didn't stop there. He went on to education freedom accounts, the most expensive, or one of the most expensive voucher programs in the country, sending our taxpayer dollars to private and religious schools. That's new, but that's not New Hampshire. Finally, on the economy, he has one tactic that he uses on the economy. Give tax breaks to my wealthy friends and donors, his wealthy friends and donors, and continuously cut taxes for large out-of-state corporations in the majority. The whole time, your property taxes are skyrocketing. And this last budget, he made sure that they continue to skyrocket, because rooms and meals tax were increased. The amount coming back to towns was actually decreased by 25%. 25%. That directly means that you're going to have more property tax burden from the state. And there's more. But when you look at this, and you look at the problems in the state, you look at the problems like child care. He's sitting on federal child care money that he's not spending to help our child care needs. Look at housing. Our rental assistance, federal rental assistance, gotten for us, that's not good English, sorry teachers, by Annie Custer, Maggie Hassan, Jean Shaheen, it expired. It had to go back. And most of all, last winter, we had over $200,000 of federal money for children, for nutritional assistance. He said, we don't have any children with nutritional needs, and he sent it back. That is Governor Sununu. That's the real Governor Sununu. We can't trust him on women's rights, on women's health, on anyone's health, anyone's ability to make their own health care decisions. We can't trust him on the core of our community, which is the quality of our public schools. Look at Frank Edelblut as one marker of that. That's the Commissioner of Education, if you don't know who that is. He homeschooled his children. His favorite college is Patrick Henry College, where the only science course is creationism. That's our Commissioner of Education, appointed by Governor Sununu. But imagine if you had a governor who actually you could trust. Imagine you had a governor who cares about you and about the state of New Hampshire, who really wants to fix problems and has a track record of problem solving. Think of what we could do. On women's reproductive rights, we could actually restore the law of the land for the last 50 years and put Roe versus Wade in statute and repeal the Sununu abortion ban. We could do that. And we came really close, right, Jay? One vote. One vote in the Senate to codify Roe versus Wade. That meant it was bipartisan. This is not a partisan issue. This is about what's right and what's New Hampshire. We could once again make teachers a critical part of the team that's raising our next generation. Once again. And we could make sure that a child, whether they're in Swanzey, Claremont, Berlin, Concord, that a child anywhere in the state of New Hampshire could get a great public school education. And for the business people here, we could actually develop a strategy, which we have on our website, a really wonderful strategy on housing. It's not looking at a one-time Band-Aid or a one-time fix. It's looking at a long-term, how do we tackle the need for 20,000 units in the state of New Hampshire. That's how many we need. They're not all workforce, they're not all affordable. It's the whole span. And we have a really great plan. People have been saying this is the first strategic plan they've seen in ages in New Hampshire that really would address the housing crisis. Child care. We have money available right now that Sununu is not using for child care. We can support that industry to make sure that they can once again be available. They are the workforce behind the workforce, and we need them desperately. With that kind of leadership, we can get New Hampshire back on track, and we can thrive and prosper. And for the businesses, we know how productive they can be if only they had the tools. And we can help them get those tools. That's my vision. That's where I think New Hampshire could go. This isn't a big leap. You all know this about your state. And you all know that Sununu has had 6 years to get us there and has failed. The housing crunch became a housing crisis. That didn't need to happen. And under the right leadership, each of these can be fully addressed. And we can thrive once again, and we can be a state that our children not only want to come back to, our grandchildren not only want to come back to, but they can actually afford to come back to. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm happy to take some questions.
I'll come to you with your questions if you just raise your hand, and got one in the way back. One of our new candidates, Nick Germana.
Thank you, and lots of things I wanted to ask about, but I'll stick to one. My wife is an early childhood educator. She got 2 degrees from Keene State in the 1990s. We went to Keene State. She's been in the field for 25 years. And she's just now, as an early childhood educator, making more money than she has previously in her career. She's still only making half of what my son makes as the manager of a fast food restaurant. And she's doing that in Vermont because the pay is a little bit higher there than it is here. So there's a question about the affordability of childcare. That's immensely important. I also want to underscore, because my wife has made sure I get this point, right, that we need to talk about early childhood education, right? It's childcare, but it's also early childhood education, right? And a lot of these schools, like my wife taught at Montessori school for quite a while, right, they require degrees. My wife is a professional, as I said, with 2 college degrees. We need to make it affordable, but we also, in order to make it accessible, we have to attract people into this career. The average early childhood educator in New Hampshire makes $12 an hour, right? About $24,000 a year. Why is somebody like my wife, who's been working in this field for 25 years, supposed to continue in the field with that kind of pay, right? Or thinking about my students, I teach at Keene State now. coming out with tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Phenomenally vibrant young people who want to go into early childhood education. But if you have $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in debt, why are they supposed to take a $12 an hour job in childcare and early childhood education, right? So my question is, and I've been thinking about some ways that I'm hoping maybe I can get involved in some ways to make this happen. But your thoughts on how we can recruit people into our communities that want to work, they want to work in these jobs. People don't go into this career, right, to make a lot of money, as a lot of you know, right? But they do deserve, first of all, respect, and they deserve a decent wage, right? So in any event, what are some of your ideas about how we can actually make it possible for people to come into that field in our communities and to remain in that field?
Right. So my mother, Jean, ran the largest preschool in Connecticut for many years, and then went on to become an early childhood therapist. And she died a couple of years ago. But her mantra, what she used to drive into me, not only did she figure she made all her mistakes on us, and then she was able to go and have a great career after that. But what she did say was that those years are the critical years in launching any child into adult. And also, she said, that teachers of those children know clearly which children are in distress and need extra help. So, we do not have pre-K in New Hampshire in a robust way. Not only do we not have it, some towns have elected to do it, but the vast majority, some of them are still trying to fully accommodate kindergarten. But as Jay knows, I put in a bill this year, I called it Jean's bill after my mother. I didn't realize my dad's name is Bill, so Jean's bill is kind of tough. But that bill would have created the framework to accept federal funding, which was potentially, and still is potentially going to come, to help us create pre-K. That time is absolutely critical for each child and their development. It would have cost nothing, and it was killed in the Senate. That bill was killed in the Senate. But to answer your question, we have to think about, as a state, what are our values? We made some progress on the healthcare side with Medicaid reimbursement in 2019. We were losing people in the healthcare field to Walmart or to a fast food restaurant because they could make more than they could in our community mental health centers. And we increased Medicaid by 6%. I think we need to take a look across the board at all these professions that we're deeply under reimbursing. $24,000 a year in your family, if you have any children, that puts her income below the federal poverty limit. That's remarkable. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I look forward to working with you to make sure we address those kind of iniquities. But the other thing that we need to be doing is we need to be restoring the pipeline of people who start in high school and are interested in early childhood. Senator Khan and I were talking about how Frank Edelblut has defunded those programs in our technical schools. That is the exact wrong direction, and we have to correct that. So I'd love to work with you on making sure that the reimbursement is enough to support the industry. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, is it doable if we came up with a plan to relieve student loan or student debt so if they went into child care or into early education or any sort of a teaching position? Because it's hard to get people to go in.
That's a great question. And I'll use, I don't know if you know who Don Caruso is. He's the Dr. Caruso at Cheshire Medical. But this was a classic moment when I was chair of Senate Health and Human Services. He was testifying on a bill that would have done debt forgiveness for doctors. And Keene, as many of you probably know, or Cheshire, has been trying, or had been trying to get a psychiatry program for years. And eventually what they did when they couldn't is they closed that wing. But he was testifying, and the Republican on my committee asked him a question. He said, we did a bill. In fact, we passed it. It's a law that we are going to help with the cost of education. And Dr. Caruso got this slow smile on his face. He said, yeah, but you never funded it. You can have all the policy in the world, but if you don't put the funding behind it, it's not going to happen. But you are absolutely right that the way, it's not all about salary. It's also about loan forgiveness. It's about making sure that you can afford that everyday, those everyday costs. Every single physician they've lost in that psychiatry program, when they would come and interview, they asked about loan forgiveness and it wasn't available. Had it been available, you would have had a psychiatry program at Cheshire Medical. That was the take-home message. You're absolutely right. And the combination of these two, getting salaries above federal poverty line, that's a big step in the right direction. But loan forgiveness will also, that's a driver, sometimes even above salary. Other questions for me? Are there any? Yes.
So do you have specific things that you're in favor of in the energy department?
Yeah.
Like subsidies for renewables to keep those developing, and carbon fee and dividend, or, well, that's more of a national fund, but what are your thoughts about that?
So I think the irony of the governor's stance on this is he said he was vetoing all those bills back in 2019 to protect the ratepayer. Where is the ratepayer now? The ratepayer is looking at a doubling in their energy costs. So the ratepayer is getting clobbered. They virtually eliminated, or tried to, our efficiency programs. So that's one. Efficiency is really critical. When you rebuilt this place, I'm sure you put in state-of-the-art, where did the architect in construction?
He'll be right back.
Okay. Well, I'll pick on you then. I'm sure this has state-of-the-art insulation. And that's efficiency. That's how you don't use more energy. And that, Michael Vose, the chairman of,
That's a bad one.
he and the governor went in front of the PUC and pressured them and pressured them and pressured them, and they pulled the rug on our statewide efficiency program, New Hampshire Saves. And Concord was just about to launch one of the most robust efficiency programs in the state's history. And they pulled the rug out from under that. Almost a year later, Concord is able to move forward, but with a much weaker program. And that program required an act of the legislature because the PUC was not participating. And the governor said, see what I've done? I've got this great program. You may have noticed this about him. He's the guy who's pro-choice on Monday and doing more for the pro-life movement in New Hampshire on Thursday, and on Sunday saying, oh, by the way, I'm not going to guarantee that I won't put in further restrictions. That's all one person. Really remarkable how flip-flopping he is. And on energy, it's the same thing. So, efficiency, embrace all the advances that we've seen in renewables since then. Solar, hydro, wind, and offshore wind. I serve on the offshore wind task force. And then the third one is making sure we do as much as we can to invest as much as we can from what's called RGGI, which is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, making sure we're putting that money back in. All of these are strategic investments. That's what's really critical about any program when we're looking at this. Our housing program is a strategic investment. All this energy is not only a strategic investment in our energy rates and costs, but also in our environmental future. On the seacoast, which I represent, we know sea level rise. We know nor'easters are clobbering us every winter more than they used to. And our fishermen down at Rye Harbor know that their lobsters are moving up to Maine. We know that. And it's not just a cycle. This is climate change. This is global warming. This is a huge problem. So the last one that I would say is what's called procurement. And procurement is where we leverage the energy we buy to get cleaner energy. Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, they all do it. We don't. The governor vetoed it. But this is the way we actually embrace our renewable capacity while also making sure our energy prices and costs are as low as possible. And there's more we can do, but it gets even further into the weeds. So there's an awful lot, and I know you know a lot about this. So I hope those are
It's good for now.
good for now. Great. I'll come back. Once we get all those done, we'll come back.
See you at the next stop.
That's right.
I think Fran over there had a question.
Great.
Can I ask you, you mentioned that property taxes have gone up 15%. What sort of tax structure would you favor in the city?
Great question. So the question was, property taxes have gone up 15%. What sort of tax structure would I favor? We have had budget after budget with multiple hundreds of millions of dollars of surplus in New Hampshire. I do not believe we need an income tax or a sales tax. I do believe that we need to stop giving tax cuts to wealthy friends of Sununu and to out-of-state corporations. And we need to put the money back where we know how to do it. And by the way, we did it in 2019, but the governor vetoed it. We know how to put money back in the pockets of the property taxpayers of New Hampshire. We know how to stop downshifting and actually start recapturing some of what was our responsibility historically as a state. So an example of that is municipal pensions. Municipal pensions were a deal between the state and the municipalities. We were supposed to pay 30% of the municipal pension load. That's how we attracted them to the whole program. In 2011, the O'Brien legislature took it from 30% to 0. And any of you who were on your select boards at that time probably remember the sticker shock of that. Rennie Cushing, who was a dear friend of mine, who died this year, was minority leader in the House. He put in a bill that would restore 15%. 15%, well, you say that's not a lot. Well, to the city of Nashua, it's almost $10 million in their budget. That's a lot of money. And I'm sure in Swanzey, it would be a lot of money if 15% of your pensions were now covered again. We did settle on a one-time 7.5% covering, but that was with lots of struggling, and it's only once. Whereas the tax cuts for the corporations is permanent. We have to change that. We have to rethink that. No one knows better what to do with their money than the people of New Hampshire and the businesses of New Hampshire. We have the money to return that to the people and give that property tax relief.
Hi, so I'm a local mental health volunteer advocate. It's not my full-time job, but I do care a lot about it. And so I'm active in NAMI, National Alliance Mental Illness. And my question to you is, how would you preserve the 10-year mental health plan? And then you can talk about that. Thank you.
So let me just go back 10 years before the 10-year mental health plan. In 2008, we had a really smart 10-year mental health plan. Guess how much of it actually got implemented? None. In fact, we became worse. So in 2018, we had a new 10-year mental health plan. I was elected to the Senate, and one of the first things I did is I put in a bill to say, let's do it in 5 years. That was probably unrealistic, but what we got out of it with an amendment was we said, you have to report every year on your progress toward the 10-year mental health plan. We're not going to just pass a plan and not do anything about it. So some aspects of it actually have been accomplished. But this is the reason I actually ran in 2018. It's one of the 3 reasons was mental health. Also in 2019, we passed a bill that really created a whole network of care for children. And that network was passed with a framework and $25 million to implement it. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. $5 million of that expired. This is Sununu. This is his leadership or lack thereof. So what happened when COVID hit? Anybody remember February of 2021? 51 New Hampshire children were sitting in ERs across our state in mental health crisis. 51. Do you know how long the longest stay was that I knew of? Just guess. 15 days? 20 days? 32 days. That's Sununu. If you give me the tools to tackle mental health, if you pass it through the legislature, we're going to do it. And guess what? That program is still not fully implemented. And it's 3 years later. We have to have leadership at the top that prioritizes our children, their mental health, their public schools, and we can do it. But that's the way we hold the department accountable to the 10-year mental health plan. We can do it. But we have to stay on the ball. We have to really keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening. And that's the way we also keep kids out of the ER. We still have adults boarding in our ERs. And we passed a bill, my bill, SB 11, that would have decreased that. It's still happening. I frankly don't think the governor knows how to solve these problems. I don't think he does. I do. Medicine is my field. I know how the system works. I know how to hold people accountable. And I know how to implement really great bills when they happen. And one other thing I know how, which every state rep and every state senator here knows, actually it's just you, sorry, is how to get things done in New Hampshire. We don't get things done by waiting for the legislature to hand us a solution and taking credit for it if we like it, or vetoing it if we don't like it. We saw that in 2020. Sununu had set the state record, the most vetoes in the history of New Hampshire. He was absolutely saved by COVID. And he's doing the same thing. He didn't learn from that. The way you get things done in New Hampshire is you start at the beginning of the process with the legislature, and you sit down and you say, what are our problems and how are we going to solve them? And you craft legislation together that you track through. My office will follow and make sure that at every step of the way, it's something that I can sign at the end and actually solves the problem. And then once, I have to be careful about this, I'm a gastroenterologist, but once it comes out the other end, sorry, once I sign it, it's up to me, it's my responsibility to make sure it's fully implemented. My responsibility. It's not the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services, because they work for me. They work for the state of New Hampshire. And that's the way we get things done. That's the way we make sure the 10-year mental health plan is fully implemented. We can do it. We just have to have the leadership who knows how to do it. Yes, sir.
Yes, My wife and I just recently retired. I was wondering if I could have the retirement community to protect Social Security and Medicare and protect our homes that we've worked our whole lives for.
So probably of those, 2 out of 3 are federal, Medicare and Social Security. But we did work on closing what's called the donut hole in Medicare. If you don't know about that, it has to do with how prescription drugs are covered. I think actually we can celebrate the work of the Maggie and Congress, our congressmen, Andy Custer, Chris Pappas, Maggie Hassan, and Jean Shaheen. They did an amazing job with prescription drugs. It's going to become, or this will really make a big difference in terms of the cost of prescription drugs. But at a state level, probably the biggest impact we can have is making sure you can stay in your own home. And that's property taxes, and that's energy costs. And those are 2 things that we can really have a strong impact on. And that's what we've talked about here. In my district, we have people who have lived in their homes. In fact, I was talking to one of them. He's in charge of the Rye Water District, and he and I were talking about it. His family has had the house for generations. But the appraisals and the property values have gone up, and the property taxes have gone up with it. And he's not sure he can hold on to the house. And he still has a job. He's not on a fixed income. So we have to address property tax relief. We have to address energy costs, and we can. We know how. Yes?
Why are my tax dollars going to support private schools? Shouldn't they be going to support public schools?
Yes, absolutely. And
Technical education and higher education.
Yep.
And what will you do to support those kinds of programs?
Well, first of all, I voted against what you're talking about, which is the voucher program. I think it's someone's choice whether they go to a private school or religious school, but you shouldn't have to pay for my kid to go to one of those. I also think, and I know, that it is the only program where taxpayer dollars are going and there's only a single test at the beginning that you still qualify for the program. So as Senator Khan knows, I put in a bill that would have required annual means testing. So if the program is going to go forward, and if it's really targeting people with lower income, every year before school, we should check and make sure that child still qualifies. It's not. So if you're a kindergartner and you're going into the program, you only have to have 1 test, and then you get taxpayer dollars for the next 12 years. It's remarkable. It's just wrong. And the other thing it is going to do is it's going to drive up property taxes. Absolutely.
$8 million already.
Yep. It's about 5 times over budget, at least. So this is something, and oh, by the way, 80% of the children enrolled in this have never stepped foot in a public school. It's subsidizing private and religious school with your tax dollars. And when I brought that up with my means testing bill, and I said, a child on Medicaid or SNAP, which is food assistance, their parents are tested all the time, whether they still fit. And I'm sure some of you know that. So why would we do something that says, yes, you have to be tested once and you're good, to take up to $7,800 a year of public money with no further means testing? It's just wrong, and we have to fix it.
Does anyone have a question for Bobby Williams or Donovan Fenton? If not, I'd invite you to have a drink before you leave. Don't get dehydrated on me. And my husband will give a brief tour of the building shortly. And I'd also just like to introduce some of the candidates. Eli Rivera is our sheriff and has been for 5 years. Renee Murphy is running in the new District 17, so she that is Swanzey, Richmond, Winchester, Troy, and Fitzwilliam now instead of Marlborough. So that got redistricted. Lucius Parshall represents Marlborough and
Harrisville, Nelson, Sullivan, and Roxbury.
that's the new district, right? Nick Sherman is District 1, is that correct, in Keene? Yep. Swansea representative Barry Faulkner. In the back is Bruce Tatro, a former rep, and he's going to take my place.
Renee.
Oh, Amanda's here. Okay, Amanda Toll, she's a Keene rep. I couldn't even begin to talk about your district if you...
I currently represent Cheshire 16, which is Keene at large, and now because of redistricting, I'm running for Cheshire 15, which is Keene wards 1, 3, 4, 5. The Republicans made this very complicated, unfortunately. Walpole, Westmoreland, Hinsdale, and Surrey and Chesterfield.
Wow. I guess that's not true.
And Renee Montiel is the same district, is that correct? A new candidate running. For years, she'll be on the ballot as well. Terry Clark is a commissioner, county commissioner, and he'll be on the ballot. Yep.
Are there any more state reps that haven't been candidates? I just wanted to, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you what you can do for everybody here. I was on the Blue Hampshire Task Force, and I listened to a lot of people from Cheshire. 20% of Democrats did not vote for an executive council in the state of New Hampshire. 20%, and look at what we've got.
Yeah.
And in my own district, it's just appalling what Janet Stevens has done to the people of New Hampshire. We have to take the executive council back. We have phenomenal candidates running, just phenomenal. I think Shoshana is the one, yeah, and she is just spectacular.
What's her name?
Shoshana Kelly. Thanks, Jay. So it is absolutely key, not just to vote up and down the ballot, for all the way, so everybody is represented. If we want to make the change that we've been talking about, if we want to get New Hampshire back on track, if we want to be really representing the people of Swanzey and Keene and Cheshire County, we need to vote up and down the ballot all the way. Write letters to the editor, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, get active. As Billy Shaheen used to say, you all have to work really hard between now and November so we can work really hard for the next 2 years for you. So please, take Billy Shaheen's advice. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. The local headquarters in Keene, Democratic office, James Speak over there. He can help you. It's in that little street by Capelon.
Cindy's.
And thanks for coming. Have a drink, and we'll have a tour now if you want to. Or talk to your candidates.
That's great.